the kind of impacts that it would have, not only on the Tibetan Plateau, but like more than 1 billion of Asian population. And also the plateau, Tibetan Plateau has rich diversity consisting of thousands of diverse and endangered animals and plants. There are lots of endangered medicinal plants. And now what is happening is that the failure of Chinese government's policies in managing the land and the resources of the Tibetan Plateau has had a very devastating impact on the Tibetan nomads, Tibetan communities. For centuries, Tibetan nomads have made a sustainable use of their natural resources. What the Chinese government didn't understand is that how can a whole population survive on on a few animals, and then they move their herd, their animals, from the summer pastures to winter pastures, and they see these nomads as uncivilized because to them what civilization means is that people should be settled, people should be leading a sedentary lifestyle. Also, there is this political, invisible political objectives attached to this, because we have seen this happening not only in China but also in Iran and elsewhere, where there is a dominant nomadic population, and how the state has tried really hard to control the mobile population. And what is now happening in Tibet is that the Tibetan nomads have lost their mobility, which is central to the kind of livelihood that they have been used to. They have been used to. And what happened was that in the first 2 decades of China's effective control of the Tibetan Plateau, in the 1960s and 70s, there was this commune system. I'm sure a lot of you would know about the communist commune systems, and how Tibetan nomads and their animals and lands were confiscated by the state. So that put a lot of pressure on the health of the grasslands. And but in 1980s, what happened was that the due to Deng Xiaoping's open up policy, and there were lots of policies that were introduced to decollectivize the communes, and the Tibetan nomads got their land back, their animals back, but they didn't get any land rights. So it was still very unclear. But they were given a plot of land and told that, it is called actually household responsibility system. So each household were given a plot of land, and they had to take care of their land and whatever. But that was all located in the winter pastures. So what that means is that the summer pastures used by the Tibetan nomads, the ownership of that summer pastures was still unclear. So what happened was that in 1985, China introduced what they call as the grassland laws, which is the main legal instrument that is used by the government to manage the grasslands in its western provinces, including Tibetan Plateau. So that law was ostensibly meant to manage sustainably the grasslands of the Tibetan Plateau. But what happened with that law was that it actually imposed on the nomads that they can own the land, but on a lease land certificates. So there were issued certificates that said that you can have ownership of this land for the not really in the sense of owner, but they will lease the land for from 30 to 50 years. So within those years, they can use the land, but the summer meadows, summer grasslands were still collectively owned. That's what the grassland law says. So when they say collectively owned, it's still unclear. So where are the collectives? So in the grassland law, we see that the Chinese government has said, for instance, Article 11, I would like to quote that provision from Article 11 of China's grassland law, which says that with respect to the state-owned grasslands, which in accordance with the law are assigned for use to units under ownership by whole people and to collective economic organizations. So who are the collectives? I think this is the key question. Who are the collectives are we talking about, and where are the collectives, particularly on the Tibetan plateau? Because we have seen for the past many decades that whenever the Tibetan nomads, petitioned the central government authorities or the local government authorities, asking questions that why their lands have been confiscated, or why their nomads have been forcibly relocated to urban fringes in state constructed houses. So these questions are very important, because when they protest, it shows that there are no collectives at all, because it's just provision on paper. Because the collectives are just on paper, because if you look at China's law on villages committees, which is actually the Chinese version of grassroots democracy. I would like to quote that, grassroots democracy. So when they talk about grassroots democracy, Tibetans wonder, where is the grassroots democracy? We don't know where it is, because when this law is being implemented, what we have seen is that these so-called village committees, on the local levels, are dominated by party members or government officials, and the local populations are not given any positions. Even if they are given any nominal positions, they are not allowed to question anything that the government says. So there is no collective organizations at all. And also, I would like to quote another, 2000. It's from the 2001 directive from the State Council of the People's Republic of China, which actually outlined the Western Development Program, which is the sort of like an umbrella legal provision for for economic development in the western regions of China, which is dominated by ethnic, so-called ethnic minorities like Tibetans, Uyghurs, and Mongolians. So here, what the Chinese government says is the first, we have seen in the grassland law provision that the land can be used collectively, the summer meadows, those lands that are not fenced. This is another subject that I would like to deal with later on. So when they say that these lands are collectively owned, with the 2001 directive, the Chinese government has again said that, well, these lease certificates that the nomads have that were issued by the government can be taken back anytime, because there are concerns of the so-called conservation projects and development projects. Yeah. Okay, I would like to end because my colleague from Cambodia has outlined a lot of issues, and we have seen that there are forced relocations and so many issues that are common with the Tibetans. So what is different about the Tibetans? Why it is different is that there is, like I said yesterday, that there is active suppression of political and civil rights, and people are not allowed to form any associations or any collectives at the grassroots. Forget about provincial level or county levels, but even at the village level, they are not allowed to form any political parties. They are not allowed to protest, and there is an active suppression of movement and communications. That's why it is very important for us to look at this subject in a broader framework of not just economic, social, and cultural rights, but also why civil and political rights are important for the facilitation of these economic, social, and cultural rights. Thank you, and I would like to have questions later on. Thanks.
Thank you, Tsomo. Now we would like to hear from Rajagopal from India.
Friends, 100 years back, Mahatma Gandhi came back to India from Africa. 2015, India is celebrating 100 years of his return. And Mahatma Gandhi's criticism of this development model, right? And 100 years after, with the arrival of globalization, we are facing an acute situation of exploitation of resources and marginalization of people. And so it's very, very, very important time for us to look at this subject. See, two cultures are face to face. A culture that believes in exploiting all the natural resources for profit making, and another set of people who believe that natural resources are, land is Mother Earth, and this is more like identity, dignity, and security for people to survive. So because of this greed, what Gandhi said, there is enough for everyone's need and not enough for anybody's greed. Because of this greed-based development model, what is happening? The impact is very clear that more and more people are getting marginalized, a greater level of poverty, larger number of people migrating from villages to cities, slums are becoming bigger and bigger, greater level of conflict and violence. So we can see it. We can see the result of this development model that is based on greed by exploiting the resources of the poor people. So deprived villages and dirty and ugly cities. This is the end result of what we are doing. Not only that, when people resist this process, the state is becoming very aggressive. So the democratic space about which we are speaking, that is also shrinking because people cannot resist this process because very powerful lobbies are behind this process called development, so people can't resist. In my own work, I was trying to identify young people in villages, train them up, so that they can organize their community to resist. So if you travel through India, you will find hundreds and hundreds of resistance. You know, some people are resisting the arrival of Coca-Cola factories, some people are resisting the arrival of POSCO company from Korea, some are resisting the Sterlite from England, you know, resistance across the country, right? But we know resistance will not be sufficient, so people need to fight for policy change. So we were also fighting at the higher level, so resistance at the bottom level, at the village level, community level, but larger struggles at the national level for policy change. And interestingly, we picked one method from Gandhi called Padayatra, that is foot march. So thousands and thousands of people marching. That is the innovative method that we introduced. And in the last 20 years, we were organizing hundreds of Padayatras in foot march in different parts of the country, leading to change, policy change. You know, in 2006, when 25,000 people marched all the way from a city called Gwalior to the capital of India, Delhi, 350 kilometers, eating one meal a day, sleeping on the national highway. And so that led to what you call a Forest Rights Act, that finally government agreeing that the indigenous people of this country will have right over forest and forest land. In 2012, 50,000 people marched all the way from Gwalior to Delhi. That led to an agreement that there will be a Homestead Rights Act, that about 60 million people in India who don't have a piece of land to put up a shed, a piece of land will be given to every one of them. A national land policy will be drafted. Women will have right over land and things of that kind. So we were working at both levels. How do you resist at the bottom, and how do we fight at the national, state level for policy shift? What I want to bring to you is one of the some of the learnings I had, because that is what we can take back. One interesting learning was we call it a four-pillar approach. You know, we found that success of any struggle to create democratic space, to have control over resources, will depend on 4 pillars. Pillar number 1, our capacity to understand the power of the poor. You know, generally the notion is poor people are powerless and they need charity, they need services. But in my work, we have understood poor people are economically poor, but socially, culturally, spiritually rich. So how do you transform this richness into action is something which we were we were learning from the poor people. The second pillar is called the power of the youth, the large number of young people in our society with wanting to do something, wanting to really change the society. That energy need to be taken into action, the power of the youth. And then power of solidarity. In a globalizing world, we haven't yet really demonstrated the power of solidarity. You know, there are isolated struggles in different parts of the world crying for solidarity, but we haven't yet moved into that arena. That will be one. And in our work, we have seen how you succeed when you get solidarity from various groups working in different parts of the world. And the final one is power of non-violence. You know, how do we, in a brutal world where the state can use brutality and violence, how do we really train people to be non-violent and respond to this brutality non-violently? So these four pillars put together, we have seen there is greater possibility to retain resources by using whatever democratic space is available. The second thing that I have learned is how do you convert anger into positive action? You know, it's like we are all angry. I mean, in this room we have 100 people, so 100 kilograms of anger, right? We are all angry about what is happening in this world, rightly so. So how do you divert this anger? If we fail to divert this anger into positive action, everybody will take a stone and throw stone at the bus and burn the police station. So it gives a justification for the state to be more aggressive and use force against social movements. So how do we convert anger into positive action is something on which I am working. And I strongly feel, like solar energy, like wind energy, anger is also an energy that need to be converted into positive action. And this is a huge science. I am very happy to discuss about it. The third area I want to share is magic of one, I call it. You know, generally we believe that we don't have the resources to fight this gigantic multinational companies and forces. And in the last many actions, when 50,000, 20,000 people walk, what we tried was to use this magic of one, that everybody putting 1 rupee coin into a pot every day. Imagine thousands of people putting 1 rupee coin into a pot every day. 1 handful of rice into a pot every day. And 1 person coming out from a family, not coming for a day, but coming for a month. Now, so this 1 rupee, 1 handful of rice, 1 person from a family, 1 month walk has really created big impact. So the days are over that we will come for a day to Delhi and make a demonstration and go back and the government will listen to you. Those days are over. This one-day cricket is not going to work. So we need to have real action, very strong action. So those are some of the lessons that I have learned. There are many more lessons. But the call today, I have 2 more minutes, I'm sure. So the call for today is moving from community action, we were moving into national action. Now we want to move into global action because many of the problems that we are facing today are because of global institutions and their dictate. IMF, World Bank, WTO. You go to your government, they will say, what can we do? Because these are the documents we have signed upon. So unless we discipline and make these global institutions accountable, creating space for people at the bottom, keeping the land and livelihood resources in the hands of people will be very, very difficult. The space at the bottom will come by making the global institutions accountable. So what we are proposing is a global march. So in 2020, preparations are on. There will be a global march. This will be a march from Delhi to Geneva, covering a distance of 8,400 kilometers. And I want this to be a real global action. And 1 million people need to march, not all the way. While 100 people will march from Delhi to Geneva, probably in every country people can march, and 1 million people can march, asking global institutions to be accountable. Because development is not all about profit. Development is also about ethics and justice. And everything economically correct need not be ethically correct. And this need to be debated. So I will take this opportunity to invite every one of you to participate in this global action so that we create space for people at the bottom to retain their resources and have a dignified life. Thank you.
Thank you so much.